I want to welcome Steve Miller to Quantum Evolution, who's a person I have known on Facebook for several years, in a kind of understanding of what the problems are, kind of the unseen quantum problems, and what are some of the solutions to those unseen and unknown problems. And I think we met through Ken Rolla originally,
Right, right. I think so.
who is actually going to be on the program in a couple months.
Oh, fantastic.
And he's a fantastic resource.
Absolutely.
But he got me into making Orgonite originally, and then you just started just going crazy with that. But let's start from the beginning. So why don't you tell us about you and your journey to becoming a scalar technology professional?
Well, what brought me to it was a couple of things junctioned at the same time. The first thing was I transitioned from a desktop to a laptop, and I started to get this burning sensation in my left hand, and it was very bizarre. And I felt it couldn't be arthritis. I felt, I'm too young for arthritis, and why was it only the left hand and why not the right hand? And I realized that the discomfort would become heightened when I was on my laptop. And I thought, oh my goodness, is there something happening with using a laptop? And so I went and I purchased my first electrical meter, which was a tri-field EMR meter that reads analog electricity levels. And I found that my laptop was generating between 60 and 120 milligauss over where my left hand was, and almost none or very little where my right hand was. And so I realized that my laptop was the source of my discomfort in my hand. And so I started researching, what is electromagnetic radiation? Where does it come from? What are the sources of it? What can you do to protect yourself? And in parallel to that, I do a lot of meditations, and I would get information in my meditation, and I could ask a question, I'd get a formula, and then I'd write it down, and then I'd make it, and my goodness, 9 times out of 10 it worked. So I began this relationship with having access to some kind of archive of information regarding these devices, and I started making mineral baths, stones that were kind of like a concrete, kind of like which was a limestone base, and I did a lot of work with using salt as one of the ingredients. And so it was very crude, very early stuff, but I felt that they were generating, simply by existing in this reality, they were generating some kind of energy from somewhere else, almost as if there were dimensional pathways bringing in energy from another location.
Right.
And so it started from there, and it grew to different things as my research went to making different things, and my quest was always to make them more powerful and more effective. And I would test them kinesthetically, muscle test them for their effectiveness, which was great. But I wanted to have repeatable scientific or technical verification of what I was doing. I wanted to be able to show people a meter and say, hey, this is the meter. This is what it looks like without the meter. This is what it is with a meter. So it's more than just just trust me,
Right.
which a lot of my friends do, but it makes me feel better that I can say with a validity beyond the kinesthetic that yes, this is functioning in a particular way. And so not only is there, making the devices and then getting them to function here, but also coming up with the testing parameters to show its effectiveness. So there's a, you know, all right, I got it, it's great, you know, it's clever, it works. How do we show people that it works?
So you're using concrete as a base as opposed to resin.
That was originally, but I found that the concrete one was, it was porous, brittle, and water would affect it. And so one of the things I really wanted to make was a personal biofield token, which you have, I think. You still have?
I agree.
So, I wanted to move to a resin-based product, but in my meditations and just my internal guidance said that using standard polyester resins would be negating, because it's so toxic, it would be negating any benefit, or it would be tainting the benefit that people will be getting from wearing it, especially with the biofield token, because typically a lot of people wear it against their skin.
Yeah.
So I searched for a product that would be an epoxy type product, but completely bio-neutral. And I found a company in Canada that does make a green epoxy. I believe it's soybean based. And that worked great, but the problem is with all natural epoxies is that there's no shrinkage rate. And I don't know if you're familiar with what creates the energy in Orgonite with crystals is the uniform compression of the crystalline structure generating that energy field. So I had multiple hurdles to get over. One was the epoxy is safe to wear, but how do I get the crystal to generate its field, and how do I make it more powerful and more effective? You know, because something can be really powerful but not effective. Something can be very effective but not very powerful. So I always aim for 90 percentile results in both categories, that it's 90% powerful and it's 90% effective. And initially when I started making the biofield tokens, I got something into that I believe David Wilcox used the term shape power, and that certain shapes just are capable of acting like circuits, electrical circuits on a circuit board. And you know, as you know, our society is programmed us, the octagon holds energy, and the hexagon acts like a diode. And in my studies with the I Ching, there are masculine numbers and feminine numbers, except for the number 6. The number 6 can be either masculine or feminine, so it can act as an input or exit point of energy, which I thought would be perfect. And that's why I now make, you know, all of my biofield tokens in the hexagonal shape, because they're able to take the negative energy or, you know, whatever it is that it's affecting, and transmute it to somewhere else, and also at the same time bring energy in from the other dimensions or parallel existences, and bring them into the wearer as well.
Wow, that's so powerful. And so let's talk a little bit about Orgonite, because this is a form of Orgonite, but it seems like it's also scalar energy that you're working with.
It's a scalar type of concept. It's not really Orgonite. It's actually a hybrid between something called radionics. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Okay, radionics, and also radionics and shape power, but with Orgonite materials.
Gotcha.
So it's a hybridized concept, and that's what I work with.
Right. So Orgonite is it's still kind of up and coming in people's consciousness. A lot of people don't know exactly what it is, what it's made of, and what it is supposed to do. So can you just give us a little lesson on that?
Well, again, Orgonite, the ones that I have encountered personally, made by different people, is they rely on the shrinkage rate of polyester-based resins to create a uniform compression upon the crystalline structure. And when you do that to crystal, it starts emanating an energy field that it doesn't in its static state.
Mm.
So crystals under pressure will start to generate an energy field, and that's the basis of Orgonite. And some people put metals in there. They put different things. I think a lot of them are very well-meaning, but they do it in a very haphazard way, and they could actually be making whatever it is they're trying to solve actually worse for them. I think a lot of people are kind of stumbling around in the dark and, oh, it looks nice. Let's make it this way because it looks nice. And, again, they're well-meaning, and, I don't think, anyone's really been damaged by it, but, a lot of people who, either wear or have some Orgonite that uses the polyester resin, I think because of how the scalar energy is generated by the crystals, there's got to be a little bit of bleed over with the toxins in the resin. So, as with anything, buyer beware. And if it doesn't feel good or it doesn't work for you, then don't use it. If it does work and it does feel good, then, who am I to say?
Yeah, exactly. And so one of the things that Orgonite and Scalar Technologies are trying to deal with is EMF and other kinds of radiation. I know that there is a lot of success. This is all coming out of Wilhelm Reich's work, I think, originally. And so he had the original Cloudbuster. So he was able to take his instruments and literally point it at clouds and dissipate clouds. And so they have these kinds of Orgonite or scalar technology where you can put it and you can either attract rain or you can repel rain, depending on what your what is needed where you are. And it's just literally it's ends. So you have a positive end and a negative end, and so people are able to bust chemtrails, and they're able to bust clouds in like a 15-mile radius. I mean, Ken Rolla has talked about this quite a bit. He does it in Florida. So so it's a spectacular technology that's dealing with something that most people have zero clue about. It's just like not in their consciousness whatsoever. So this is pretty exciting. But on a personal level, I just want to say one more thing about that is they also take them and put them at cell towers. Like they have these things called holy hand grenades, which are a mix of crystals and metal, like crushed metal, especially powders. And you can put them at cell towers, and it mitigates the EMF that's comes off of cell towers. I don't know if this is true with 5G or not, because this is like the new problem that we have to deal with. But that's kind of how Orgonite has really kind of been used in a big way in the past 5 or so years that I've been paying attention. And so that's pretty powerful to be able to do that. But how big of a problem are EMFs in our culture?
Well, I can only speak for the United States in the countries that I've visited, but basically any environment in the Western world, the human form is being subjected to abnormal amounts of EMR. And because we're bioelectric beings, and because how we function and how we create ourselves, and this is information, I don't know if you've heard of Harold Kautz-Vella.
No.
Okay, there's a gentleman, I believe he's a German chemist, former German chemist. His name is Harold Kautz-Vella, and he talks a lot about a substance called black goo.
Yes.
Okay, so anyway, he was explaining about the RNA section of our DNA. And the RNA, which is the programmable part of the helix, if I remember what he said correctly, he says that the RNA portion is what generates the microlight that is our biofield. And the biofield is part of a light respiration process that then programs our cells to regenerate correctly. Okay, so when you go to the New Age shows or whatever, and they have get your aura taken photographs, what that's actually picking up is the microlight being generated by our RNA. So, because we are beings of light and frequency.
Yeah.
And part of the information that I've been given is that the EMR that we're being subjected to is like a bug or a hack to our system, to not allow for proper light respiration through either compression of the biofield or outright interception and recoding of our RNA. Of course, there are other parts of it, that the potentials for altering what you look like, hacking lifespan, hacking accelerating aging, all these different things, and again with everybody, because everybody's genetically different, because of the something that was coined the Mandelbrot set. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
It's the fuzzy logic that no two snowflakes can be exactly the same. You can have two individuals that look the same, think the same, have almost exactly the same belief process, but there will always be that one thing that's slightly different that separates the two. Yeah. And on a broader scale, the EMR doesn't affect everybody in the same way. I'm extremely sensitive to it, and I can feel it, I can sense it, and I know to avoid it. There are other people who, bless them, they can stand in front of a Wi-Fi router and they're good to go. I believe it's a highly hazardous technology, but it's part of a larger system of a process to either shift humans into something else, or to remove humans from the face of the earth. And one other thing I realized subconsciously why I've concentrated on EMR and products that relate to cell technology and Wi-Fi is, in the late 90s, I spent time with Native elders. And I spent time with one gentleman who was a renegade Hopi. And he would give lectures and talks about, what was coming. And I remember distinctly, he pulled me over to the side once and said, "Steve, do you want to know how they're going to do it?" I said, "Sure, lay it on me. What is it?" And I believe this was 1998. He pulled out his Motorola flip phone, because that's what state of the art was back then, with the 1G. And he puts it on the table. He goes, "They're going to do it with this, and they're going to make people pay for it. They're going to make people covet it. Everyone's going to have one, and this is what they're going to use." He said, if the government gave them to everyone, they would go, "Oh, why are they giving us these phones?" But if they do it through a purchase process, and they give it a halo where you're cool, and wow, I'm going to put this microwave weapon in my pants because I'm cool, and I just cannot believe all these people running around with a cell phone tucked in their pants pocket. And it's just like, wow, it's just mind-blowing.
Or attached to their ear,
Yeah, and you know about the page in the iPhone, right?
The page?
There's a page in the iPhone, and I'll go through the navigation for it. And you sign onto your phone, and you go to Settings, and then you go to General, and then you go to About, and then you click down. I don't know if this will come up, and if you see it says Legal. You see Legal?
Yeah.
Okay. You press on Legal, and there's a selection that says RF exposure.
Yes.
See that? You click on that, and it basically tells you, that the SAR rating is within limits, which is not true, because they don't explain SAR, and it doesn't tell you that the SAR, the phone can actually generate much more energy than the SAR.
And it doesn't rings. It changes when it rings.
It changes when it rings. It changes when you do different functions, like if you are browsing Facebook or downloading Pandora or something, it's much higher levels. And I can bet you that when they did the SR rating, the Bluetooth wasn't on, and the Wi-Fi search function wasn't on either. So, you know, like with everything, it's been put
Narrowed
into
down
a, you know, oh yeah, it's safe, but don't push any buttons and don't turn it on. But it says, during testing, iPhone radios are set to their highest transmission levels and placed in positions to simulate uses against the head with no separation and then worn. So they're saying, don't wear it against the torso, and if so, have a 5 mm separation, which is ludicrous, because with my EMR meter, it's at least 180 millimeters before it starts dropping off. So when you have a phone, you basically have you know, a 1.5 foot circle in every direction, a 3 foot, you know, 1 meter circle. That's the blast radius of a phone, if you want to call it that. And if you read this, it says never carry it against the body and don't put it to your head to make a phone call. Use the speaker function or the supplied headphones. And it's right in there. You know, that's their nobody reads it. It's their get out of jail card. Because then, you know, it's just a matter of time before, you know, all these people start coming down with cancers of the pelvis and cancers of the brain.
Absolutely true.
It's just going to happen.
It's already happening.
Yeah.
I mean, glioblastoma has just skyrocketed, you know, and it's like, you know, totally incurable brain cancer, and people don't understand. But it's cell phones, it's Wi-Fi routers, it's regular phones too. You know, like if you have a cordless phone,
right,
and you're using that also has horrible amounts of EMR or EMF as well. And what are the other things that people should be looking out for as well?
Well, there's two kinds of EMR. There's analog, which is what they used to call dirty electricity or electrosmog. That would be EMR from junction boxes, power lines, you know, anything that has, you know, a motor or a coil. You know, it's a different frequency range. Right. The effects of analog EMR, long term, it takes much longer for it to set, because I think it's a much slower speed of wave energy. Typically, our cancers and leukemias are related to analog EMR. Digital EMR, which is the microwave frequency band, which is what, you know, is, I think, a bigger concern because the effects are much more immediate. Those can include cell phones, smartphones, smart meters, anything that has Bluetooth technology also emits this frequency. Bluetooth sound bars. It's just amazing the proliferation of Bluetooth enabled and Bluetooth utilizing devices being manufactured for the consumer market, with a disproportionate amount being aimed at children. You know, it's really, you know, you're giving your kid, you know, a hand grenade, and here, you know, Johnny, play your video game or sit in this, you know, Bluetooth enabled speaker chair that has speakers. So when you play your video game, so they're just getting radiated in the head, they're getting radiated in the genitals because they're playing it, and you know, it's you know, just it's sterilization on a mass scale, as well as, you know, immunosuppressive, and also destroying the proteins in the brain. According to a gentleman named Barry Trower. Have you heard of him?
No.
He's from England, and he worked for the Royal Navy and NATO in the 80s, and he developed microwave weapon systems, which were to be deployed as nuclear weapon alternatives for NATO, should the Russians, you know, spill over into West Germany. Instead of using tactical nukes, they were going to use microwave weapons to fry the soldiers from the inside out. And he got called out of retirement in the 90s when people started getting initial disorders from early cell phones and from, you know, these EMR devices. So to go back to your question, or let me just finish with the very short thing. So what he said is what EMR does, especially in kids, is it destroys the protein strands in the brain that generate personality and moral character, and they can never be regrown.
Wow.
And the side effect of that is you're going to have these wild children that are incapable of having that safety net of, you know, like, I'm not going to do this because it's not safe, or I'm not going to do it because it's not right. It's literally a destruction of their morality and their morals, their ethos, through electromagnetic means. And when I heard that, it dovetailed with another piece of information that I got. It's a book printed by the Illuminati of their future vision for their world, disguised as a book written by futurists, but it was commissioned by a group of people who call themselves the Club of Rome. I don't know if you've heard of them. Okay, so, and in one of the things they predict for the future is something called the intergenerational war. And basically what it is, it's where the young people are going to rise up and kill off all the old people, because the old people wasted the earth and did all these bad things. They did everything wrong, and they have the right way. And it's kind of scary. And one of the ways that I see it happening in real time is in 2008 in Australia, they started installing Wi-Fi's in the classrooms that can't be turned off.
Yep.
And there was a news article, I think it was ABC 2020 in Australia, did a little 20-minute show on the Wi-Fi's, and of course they're all looking, you know, like, oh, is this going to give me cancer? And of course, it's too soon to say that, you know, these kids are getting cancer, and it's too soon to tell, not that it was covered, if the children are sterile from being exposed to that much radiation. But keying off what Mr. Trower said about the brain damage, I sat and thought about the process, like, all right, if a child does experience brain damage, you know, what would the next step be? What would that look like in a school setting? And it would be that either more than likely he or she would be sent to the school psychologist.
Right.
Which is, they just happen to have one on site, right? And then what does the psychologist prescribe, or what do they do?
Yeah.
They give psychiatric meds to help the child deal with their problem, right? So on a whim, I searched psychiatric medication, Australian kids or Australian children. And there was study after study showing that the use of psychiatric medication is skyrocketing in Australia.
Sure.
And no one knows why.
Sure.
You know, it's like, gee, why is this happening? And because they did in 2008, and so they've been at it for 10 years now. So the kids that went into kindergarten are now in 10th grade, and so on and so forth. And so when you look at the children and what's happening to the use of the medication, then it'll give us a picture of what is happening in the United States when they put Wi-Fi in the classrooms in 2015.
Yeah.
We'll be there in 2025.
Yeah. You know, and I tried talking to people about this, and people are just not, they can't hear it, you know, they can't wrap their brains around it at all.
No.
And it's like such a huge problem, especially the rollout of 5G, you know, and people are begging for it, right? Like they're making people beg for it. And people have no idea how absolutely destructive this particular frequency range is to the brain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the DNA as well. I mean, it's just, you know, it's just you know, how long will it take once 5G is rolled out until we start seeing just like psychotic people turning psychotic, you know, for no known reason. They have no idea. And it's like this whole thing, if you can't see it, it's not there, you know, and the reality that people are just unable or unwilling to open their consciousness to the fact that there's so much out there that we can't see that's harming us, whether it's GMOs or Roundup or chemtrails, which we can see, but we don't see it as it falls down to our level.
Unless you have a laser.
Okay, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. So
Yeah.
lasers reveal chemtrails?
Yes, they do. You can use. I do mean to interrupt your statement, but if you use like what I use is a laser pointer that's a green color, and you can be out on a perfectly still night and you can shoot that thing somewhere, and you suddenly see that you're actually standing in a snow globe blizzard of nanoparticulates you can't see.
What?
As far as it's shocking. I did it once, and I pointed the laser at a palm tree that was maybe half mile away, and there was no end to the particulates. You turn the laser off, it looks like a perfectly clear night. But because the light amplification by the stimulated emission of radiation via the crystal, it somehow picks up on it. You can actually see the particulates of dust, and then you see these much shinier metallic looking things in the, that are in the light beam. And the longer you leave a light beam on, the faster they go, because they're stimulated by irradiation. So if you have multiple lasers, you could have one going, and then you can see it that the laser is actually stimulating, as on the days with the sunlight. I don't know if you've noticed where it'll be roasting hot in the sun, you step in the shade and you're freezing. Yeah. And that's because the air is loaded with this material that is reactive to irradiation. And the sun is, of course, a very large source of radiation.
Wow. So it's not just cell phones that we have to worry about.
It's a complete system. It's a complete system. Of which, if the natives that I spent time with in the 90s are correct, the origin of which is Offworld.
Of course, yeah, I believe that. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot happening. Again, it all comes back to we can't see it, therefore it doesn't exist, you know. And but yeah, there's a whole war going on. It's kind of like Foundation or Star Wars, you know. It's just like, okay, here we are stuck on Earth. We have no idea what's happening out in the universe.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, it's hard for us to know the absolute truth about anything, except that there's just certain people who are really connected and who are getting unbelievable information just because of they're such high state meditators. And they are able to transcend the planetary boundary and actually access, you know, universal wisdom. And from those people, we're getting, just like you are, quite obviously, you know, you are connected to source in some way, and it takes meditation. I mean, we're talking in this whole series, we're covering everything. You know, we're trying to help people understand that you know, we are being challenged in dramatic ways at this point in time that is just not obvious. You have to turn your attention away from the programming to just away. Turn your attention away from the programming, the TV, the media, the games, everything like that. Unplug, and then just switch your perspective a little bit. And so much more comes into play when you are unplugged and actually paying attention to the real world, if that's what it's called, you know.
Right.
So Steve, tell us more about what it is that you do, what you're creating with the tokens.
Well, I make several products, but I think the ones that I sell the most of are the tokens. the mineral baths, the charged water, the Wi-Fi filters, and something I call a play plate, because my son likes to play video games and different things, and it just, I couldn't allow him to use them in their natural state. I had to develop something that would make it safer for him to engage his experience. So what I realized the other week is that I'm not making separate products, but I'm making a complete system for supporting the biofield and preventing the hacking and intrusion from less than benevolent energies, you know, bringing them into your field. And while we're going through all of this, and the earth is, you know, especially our country is going through such a turmoil, intentional turmoil, unfortunately, that it's really, really important to be able to go off grid, so to speak, in terms of your energy. And how does one access that? How does one develop the potential of becoming off grid with their physical selves? And I realized that all of these products help to bolster the biofield, so that if you have the intention, you have half the chance of achieving some sort of success with it. The water, it nourishes the cells with you know, scalar energy, as well as, you know, light frequency and sound frequency.
Nice.
The mineral baths are charged with scalar energy. So when you take a bath, your dermis will be exposed to it.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is when you're taking a bath, this happens to me and a couple other people that use it, is you can state a command to your field, like delete EMR or remove EMR, and all of a sudden the water will start rippling. Like, all right, who's moving the water? I'm not moving. And so it's almost as if, because the field is now in a, you know, in a water situation that is charged, you can give commands, and when you're not in the water, because the air is much, you know, less dense, you don't feel it. But when you're in a water situation, you can give the command, and the field is responding to your commands to it.
Wow.
And other people literally have had out-of-body experiences. Other people just really enjoy it and just stay there. A lot of people use it to help with jet lag, because also flying is extremely radioactive and toxic, especially these days. And so it runs the gamut. You know, it depends on who you are as a practitioner and what your purpose is with it. So the baths does all sorts of things. I think I've lost my point, but anyway, the tokens, bathwater, everything helps to either empower the biofield or to shield it from the more negative ends of the technology that we're being exposed to.
Right. And do you have a website people can go to?
I have a website. It's very simple, and it needs to be updated, but it's RadSafer, RADSAFER. So for the theory being making radiation safer, radsafer.com. And there's just it's a very rudimentary site. I do need to update it, you know, to make it more modern.
But people can contact you from there, and they can see what's going on. And
Yeah.
Awesome. That's so great.
Do that.
Wonderful. I've bought several of your Biofield tokens, and I think they're really amazing. I have them over my router. Excuse me. And I wear one. I have one in my car, and then I wear one. And you know what? I mean, I see people just kind of getting crazy and just not knowing why they're getting crazy. And I think, you know, anything that we can do to protect ourselves from these attacks, and they're coming on so many different fronts. but it's possible to protect ourselves. And, you know, it's the only way that we're going to make it through is if we take action. So this is a really wonderful service you're doing. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom with us. So thank you.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
It was wonderful to see you, and I'll be getting some of that bath salt pretty soon, I'm sure.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you so much, Steve.
All right. Thanks, Meg. Take care. Have a nice night.
You too.